So a few months ago, a friend of mine introduced me to your work. He pitched it really well to me. He told me that you were the man behind Alex Hormozi's success, and that you had worked with him, coached him a lot. And so yeah, I was really intrigued, and I looked through your content online. I looked at your YouTube, through your website. I also read your book. I really liked it. I got really hooked. I think I read it in like 2 or 3 days. Even though it's about webinars, I think it's about basically selling, right? And I think there's a lot of things you can learn there that go beyond webinars. And in fact, on my website, I have a list of my top 100 favorite books of all time, and I think I put yours in position 23. So yeah,
Nice.
I really liked it. And yeah, you have an incredible curriculum, working with amazing people in amazing companies. I think you've generated like what, $300 million online. And obviously, I wanted to talk with you, and we're gonna talk about business. But honestly, there was something that I was really curious about that I want to talk about first that really hooked and caught my attention. And it's that before you got into the whole make money online thing, you were a Krishna monk. And I'm really curious to hear more about that because I'm also deep into spirituality. I love Hinduism. And I'm really curious to know what is the background behind that? Why is it that you got into it? What brought you to become a monk, if you don't mind sharing it?
Yeah. It's, it's so funny too, because like in the Bhagavad Gita, there's like four men become inquisitive of the absolute or the spiritual essence, and one of them is those that are suffering.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, that was me. I had a very difficult childhood,
Hmm.
very rough, and I had, as a result of that, depression, anxiety. Uh, I got to the point where I could barely leave the house, and I was doing music, rapping since I was 7 years old in front of
Yeah.
audiences, performing, writing, all this kind of stuff. They were always called to me. So I wanted to do music, but I was also struggling, you know, mentally, having all these problems. And I had a musician friend who was a little bit out there, and he went and he traveled with the monks because they came through. I lived in Iowa. They came through Iowa City. It's a college campus. They were there. He just hops on a bus with them and starts going around the country. He comes back. He tells me about it. I said, "This is interesting." So I started looking into it, and I was like, "Okay, I'll try it out." And I started doing like the chanting, and immediately started feeling better. So I
Hmm.
started doing more, started doing more. And then 30 days, I was like full blown monk mode. I was
Okay.
just locked in, ready to do everything I could. I was like a monk. I didn't live in the temple or anything like that, and
Yeah.
I didn't wear the robes, but I practiced like a monk would practice, my spiritual practice. And I did that for like 4 years. And so what I would do is try to, like, I mean, that woke me up. And then from that, I started really taking the music serious
Hmm.
and started figuring out how the music business works. And then that got me into business, and then it got me into marketing. And then that's really the chain of effects
Right.
of dominance knocking each other over to where I became, who I am today.
Right. And what age was that you got into the whole Krishna monk thing?
I was 20 years old.
Okay. 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 And what was like? How did the whole thing with rapping tie into business? You wanted to figure out like how to sell your songs, I guess, and that's when you started to learn about marketing.
Yeah, so it was tough, man. I put out what I felt was a really good album, and I spent all my money to produce it, create it, and print it, and then I still couldn't sell it, and I
Hmm.
couldn't get people to come to shows, and I couldn't make a living off of it. So I'm like, man, what's going on here? It's so funny how the world works because I was at the time, this was like 2004, 2005. I There was this company called CD Baby, and
Yeah.
you used to not be able to easily sell online, and you couldn't get into iTunes back then, like
Hmm.
unless you were in a major label. So CD Baby was able to get independent musicians onto iTunes, which was huge. It was a distribution platform back then. I didn't realize how huge it was. If I'd have known now, I would have really hit it heavily. But the guy who created the company, Derek Sievers, many years later, I ended up giving him some advice on marketing in
Okay.
business and a whole different aspect on Amazon with his books.
Okay.
Small world, but Derek Sievers was the creator of that, and he was a brilliant marketer. And I was on their email list, and he sent out an email one day about this concepts of business and personal development and productivity. And then that got me in the rabbit hole where I was just like, wow, you can actually have far more influence on your success and your outcome, not just from like the work you do, but your approach to your own personal way of showing up, your livelihood. It's not too different than being a monk, but it's different in the sense that we're doing it for a specific objective in a materialistic way. And I don't mean like chasing money. I mean like in the material world, like we're outcome driven, focused and all that. So I started thinking, wow, this is really powerful. And then so I started studying every aspect of the music business that I could. So how does this work? How does that work? How does this work? How does this work? And then I thought the marketing was really cool. So, I built an email list back in 2004 in my music. And I did a podcast in 2004 before Joe Rogan ever did a podcast. I had a music podcast. So I was trying everything. I was doing press releases, SEO. I had a YouTube channel in 2005, the first year that YouTube was live. And I was doing anything and everything that I possibly could to get the music out there. It's just, I learned early on that entertainment is a different type of business than education. So entertainment is tough because you're trying to satisfy people's what they're into at the moment, and it's trendy and it changes a lot. It's a lot less.
Yeah.
It's more risk, right?
Yeah.
But if somebody's like, I need to sleep better at night, like it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from. If you can solve that problem, A, they'll generally pay you more than they will for entertainment. And B, it's more predictable. So I was like, man, I like this marketing better than entertainment, like selling entertainment, whatever. But if I can empower and educate people, that got me really excited. Right. So that's kind of the transition that I got from the music business into the business of marketing.
Right. And there's no, like, you don't miss, do you have it sometimes maybe in the back of your mind trying to do something again with music, rapping?
I do, yeah.
You're not going to try do anything?
My problem is the way my mind works is if I can't do it excellently, I don't want to do it at all. Right. So I either have to commit fully to it or I just have to be okay with not having it be part of my life. And I'm okay with that. So I'm really good. This is an ADHD thing. So I'm massive ADHD. If I'm interested in it, it's my whole world. But if I'm only slightly interested in it, then I can't focus on it. Yeah. So I can only really focus on a couple things at any given time and have capacity and space in my life for other stuff. So I got like 2 passions, 3 passions at most, and that's it. So if anything is outside of those, it just doesn't exist in my world. So like I can't do the music because next thing you know, I'll be doing it 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Right. And then, I got 3 kids now. So.
Yeah. But I think that's great. That's a good trait to have. I think that's kind of like a superpower. I think most people suffer from the opposite thing, right? They do a little bit of everything, but not a whole lot of one thing, right? One thing that I wanted to ask you, because I knew that eventually you quit the whole rapping thing and the music thing. I wanted to ask you, when you're in the middle of building something, how do you distinguish between a phase that is just difficult and it's hard, but you know that you should push through, or getting to the point that, okay, no, this is actually failing. I should cut my losses and move to something else?
That's a great question. So I try to validate things very early on for small stakes to determine if it makes sense investing more time, energy, and money into it. So I try to build a model where validation can occur immediately that shows me something's there. And if it's not there, then I can kill it and move on instantaneously. So I really learned this when we were launching a lot of courses and programs. What would happen was we would start building these beautiful websites to launch them in these really robust members areas. And we would have these really fancy logos and graphics, and we would program out all of the programming and all of the education. And every time we started making it better, and better in terms of production value. What I discovered is none of that typically made a difference whether somebody was going to buy something or not. Now, if they were going to buy it, that helped capitalize on the market greater and have a bigger impact overall. But if they didn't buy it, we just wasted hundreds of hours in build out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is counter to how I started. I would start with an idea that was small in scope, that was very cheap. So I sold it for very cheap. And then I would determine if people actually were improved upon from when they bought the program in a short period of time, right? So if I didn't immediately get back a bunch of testimonials and a bunch of people saying this was worth the money, then I'm like, okay, I wouldn't do the product. But then as you get bigger and as you get more successful, you get more complexity. And that's where I ended up. So I went back to my roots. And this is typically where we live at these days for most of the stuff that I do is let me launch something in a beta format. That's typically how we do it. Doesn't have a members area really. It doesn't have high production value. Let me just see if I can move somebody into a higher state of success with the minimal amount of friction in moving parts as possible. If I can, then we will go crazy and invest tremendous amounts of resources into it. But if we can't, none of that other stuff matters. A beautiful looking members area doesn't matter. All the different structure, all the different things that are built out, fulfilled upon to the nth degree, none of that matters at first until the idea is validated. So unless you have the right market message product fit, you shouldn't do much else. Once you have the right fit, then you should put in as much intensity to take an already proven thing and try to make it the very best in its category.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that when you have, because at least with the things that I've sold, I've never sold as much as you, not even close, obviously, but like, at least because I have a background in e-commerce, affiliate marketing, something that I noticed is that sometimes I would have these products or offers that I could scale up to a certain point, but then eventually I would hit a ceiling. But then again, like kind of like the same question, how do you know if it's actually a real ceiling and that it's like, okay, let's move on to the next thing, or it's just like a hardship difficulty that you can push through and scale even more?
Yeah, usually you'll hit a ceiling and it's a real ceiling once you get growth. So like your first ceiling is getting attention and getting people to even care enough to not the money's the cheapest thing. Like paying you money is simple. Paying you a time, that's hard. So people will buy the program, but will they consume it? That's actually more difficult than selling the program. So the first thing we have to do is hit the ceiling, break through the ceiling of attention. That's usually an artificial selling. So we can hit that and then we go on this upward journey and then we'll hit the next ceiling. Usually we'll make a lot of money or we'll make decent amount of money. And then we have to have the conversation of, do we change to go to the next level, or are we okay with this thing just producing what it's supposed to produce, right? Because if you try to make a tree grow taller than it's supposed to grow, no matter what you do, it's only going to grow to a certain amount of height, right? But potential is, well, maybe it can get higher because we're not trees. Businesses aren't trees. And so very often I have this philosophy of swimming downstream, not swimming upstream. So I would prefer to take things in their natural state that are already having momentum and work with them than fighting against gravity. And so oftentimes for us, we create assets, and then if they can continue to produce with minimum maintenance, I am totally okay with that, because it gets risky. Because oftentimes when you hit like a platform and you can't get past it, you have to completely reinvent the approach to get to the next level. And that is incredibly difficult to do and has a lot of risk, when it's just like, we can let this thing hum along and then we can spin up a new thing. And now we might have 2 assets or 3 assets or 4 assets. And that's preferable to me. So I'd rather have many different assets that are producing a decent amount each. And then when you add them up, it's a lot, than put one asset out there and constantly pushing it. It's tough. Business is so nuanced, which is why I like it. Because if in certain industries, having one asset that you continually improve, that is the best approach. In other industries, it's the kiss of death. So you have to kind of calibrate towards that, because is the market expanding as a whole, or is the market contracting? So these are externalities that we have to pay attention to. Are we able to reach more customers in a way that makes sense? Or have we penetrated the market so thoroughly? What's the competition profile look like? Oftentimes success will create its own competition. I was just talking to one of my biggest clients today. He does hundreds of millions of dollars. And we were discussing a new approach for a launch that we're working on. And I said, the problem with this, because I've had experience doing some of the things in these launch arenas, is if you tip your hand ahead of time, what will happen is your competition will know when you're launching, know what your plan is. They will plan their launch at the same time, and you'll be the $2,000 thing, and they'll sell the $20 thing. And they'll be like, yeah, everything they're saying is true, and our stuff is $20, so you should just buy our stuff instead. And then we'll create confusion in the marketplace. So these are these dynamics that we're playing around with. So we have to factor in, what does the competition profile look like? All of those things will determine what we push. So the answer in business is always, it depends, which is why I think having cognitive flexibility may be one of the most useful traits you can have if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur.
Do you think that is something you're born with or that you can train into?
I mean, I think some people have more of it than others initially, but I'm pretty sure that you can train it and see improvements across the board for everyone, right? So cognitive flexibility is the ability to hold two different contradictory things in your mind at once. Mm-hmm. And still manage them. Like here's some fun examples for you. There's fast food, which the modality there is the food isn't good, but at least it's fast. And then there is like my favorite dining experience I ever had of all time was in Monaco, Hotel de Paris. My wife and I went there for an anniversary. It's a 14-course meal and it took 4.5 hours, right? So simultaneously, the market can value speed, and it can value the opposite of speed. Yeah. It can value cheap and it can value expensive. You can take an approach like I take on webinars, which is 2, 3, 4, 5 hours long, which runs in the face of the so-called short attention span economy that we're supposedly in right now, which isn't true. But you can also build a business where you do short form content. You can long form and short form content can both work separately. They can connect together, work together. But the flexibility is to know the strategic facets of each one of these things and know when to implement each and when not to implement each. The other brilliant thing about cognitive flexibility is it allows you to not identify so much with your losses. Because a cognitively inflexible individual will be like, I tried something and it failed, therefore I'm a failure. That's very inflexible. But somebody who's cognitively flexible was, I tried this thing, I learned some stuff about what happened with it, and now I can invest that knowledge into the next thing that I try. So we're much more flexible because we don't identify in a binary state of win or lose, good or bad, success or failure. We recognize that there's always opportunities to adjust, learn, see things from a new perspective. And I think that's really important. It's one of the things that I've been able to contribute, I feel, in this business is helping people become more cognitively flexible, which then makes them have better decisions in their business and therefore they get better results.
That's amazing. Something that I wanted to ask you, because before you were mentioning the whole thing with productivity and Derek Sivers, is that something, I guess, that many years ago, not now, but I've noticed that you have a lot of videos on YouTube also on productivity. Is that something that you used to struggle with?
I was always incredibly gifted at productivity, which is, I think, what's great about being able to teach it. Because I just see things from a completely different world. I never knew what the 80-20 concept was. And then one day I read it in a book and I'm like, oh yeah, duh, obvious. But it's not obvious, right? I used to be able to in school, I got super good grades, but I didn't get perfects, but I got almost perfect because I knew I could put a little bit of effort in to get almost perfect, and the cost of putting the full effort in to get perfect wasn't worth it. I didn't see the upside to the extra effect. So I was able to look at the teachers, determine how they graded, and then play towards that. So if a teacher liked a lot of participation, gave them a lot of participation. If a teacher much preferred test scores, then I studied for the test and I didn't care about the homework, right? So I'd optimize to the teacher. It was incredibly productive. I only probably did 2 hours of homework in my entire life in high school because I could get it all done in the class during the time it was being assigned and communicated. So I was incredibly productive. Now, when I was mentally going through what I was going through, I wasn't productive, but that's not a function of strategy. That's a higher level issue involved in this. So I was always super hyper productive. And then when I put strategy and systems on top of it, it took it to a whole new level entirely. But I've always valued productivity because, again, the way my brain works is um, I I know that if I get distracted, then the cost of that distraction can be I don't finish the thing. So I'm like, how do I finish the thing as fast as possible at the highest degree to combat my ability to leave it behind if I get
Yeah.
distracted, right? So I'm fighting against my own limitations. So if I'm super productive, then I don't have to worry about being distracted because I'll get done before I get distracted.
Exactly. 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 I wanted to ask you a few things from working with Alex Hormozi. Obviously, he's learned a lot about you, but I was curious, what have you learned about him?
Yeah, I mean, Alex is the best in the business right now in terms of taking and understanding different models and connecting and applying them together. He's also the hardest working guy that I've ever met in my entire life. So he is incredibly good at what he does, and he's also good at connecting the dots in other places and putting them together. Like it's really tough for somebody to be really good at just say social media, for example. Like to get really good at the highest level, generally the rule of thought would be that's 100%. You couldn't do more than that. Like you either have to be good at that or paid ads. But Alex is also good at paid ads. He's also good at marketing and he's also good at selling. And so it's incredible to see how far you can really move it. Like you can be good at both organic and good at paid. You can be good at both selling one-to-one and selling one-to-many. And that's like aspirational when you notice that. So it just goes to show you it's possible under the right conditions to assimilate many different models, become excellent at them, and then connect them all together.
Right, 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 right. There's something that I wanted to ask you about because for your personal brand, I've noticed that on Instagram I see that you're way more active, but on YouTube you haven't posted in a while. Is is the personal brand something like you're kind of have taking seriously, or is something that maybe in the future you want to take more seriously, or what?
It's a fantastic question. So I suffer from this issue of being too early, too much.
Mm-hmm.
So again, when I said I was on YouTube in the early days, when I was on YouTube, you couldn't post business content initially. They would kick you off and they would ban you.
Wow.
Facebook, you couldn't advertise on Facebook because they didn't like that content. They
Huh.
wouldn't let you advertise. Google, if you were to create a landing page that was like opt in for this free guide, they wouldn't approve that because they would say you had to put the whole information on the page. You had to pay off on the promise.
Hmm.
And then you could ask them to opt in, right? So I
Yeah.
come from a world where you couldn't hire anybody to do the thing. Like we used to poach people from corporate, bring them into the marketing world and try to teach them how to do digital marketing. And I lost millions and millions of dollars
Hmm.
because it's impossible. Nowadays, there's kids that grow up at 14 that have studied me on Instagram. So by the time they're 19, they come and work for me. They already know who I am and what I do. And now we can hire them and we can build a workforce. So I used to have a massive personal brand once upon a time. I was the guy in a lot of circles. Um, but the reach of branding when I came up was so small. Like the cost to build a powerful brand and to really break through to the next level was it just was out of the reach of almost every single marketer. You just couldn't do it. You either had to do branding or you had to do marketing, and branding was way more expensive, and the payoff to branding was negligible. It
Hmm.
just wasn't that good. There wasn't enough avenues out there to really truly build a brand. So I'm like, okay, this branding stuff doesn't really work. That was wrong of me, but it was right in the time that I was living in. And the other thing about it is I did not like social media. I was
Hmm.
seeing it in its inception. I was watching it as it was hurting people. I was noticing how the addictive qualities of it. And I'm personally not a social media guy.
Right.
Like I don't use social media. It messes up my thinking. So email was killing it. We were the best at email. Social media could never beat email, like for years, like a decade plus. All these guys on social media, and we know because we compete against them in product launches. You bring your leads, I bring my leads. Somebody gets first in the launch, somebody gets second. and we would get first, and we would beat everybody else. So email was king. Social media couldn't really produce any revenue. And then one day the market changes, as it always does. But I was doing really good. Like, I was making more money than ever, so I still didn't need to be on social media. And so I was like, I'm not interested in it. Let me just do my thing. But then I just recognized that these days you have to have both if you want to play at the top level. So you've got to have a strong personal brand, and you got to have really powerful direct response marketing on top of that. It's not one or the other. So I've started building the personal brand again, and this has been a fun journey, and it's actually getting really exciting to me now, because like just on Instagram alone, I have 1.3 million views in the last 28 days. Facebook, we have about 1 million views. We just started on YouTube Shorts again, and I just yesterday filmed a couple of YouTube scripts because I have neglected YouTube. So it was like, okay, we tried a couple of different things when we got back into the social media space and failed miserably at all of them. And so then I kept stripping it away. I'm like, okay, let me take a simpler version and try it again. And it didn't work. Let me take a simpler version and try it again. And it didn't work. So what really clicked is when we stripped it down and said, we're only going to do Instagram Reels because it's short form. It's not long form. And then we can build a process, and we're only going to, and so we just stripped the whole thing down to the least moving parts possible. And that started catching. Like I had a reel that got like 300,000 views so far. Nice. In the last 30 days alone. We got a reel that we posted yesterday that's already at 27,000 views in 24 hours. So that one's going to pop. And I'm super excited because now we can add in a little bit more complexity. So we can start putting in more pieces like YouTube, for example, and then start putting in calls to actions, not just increasing reach, but also some commercial intention in there too. But what's cool is I'm not making clickbait, like everything's educational. So that way we can still attract the right type of avatar. But the reality is if you don't have numbers, nobody takes you serious. It doesn't matter how many things I've sold, who I've worked with, the launches I've been a part of, the impact I've had in the market, the millions of dollars I've made, the big name clients I work with. If you look me up, you're like, that dude is, he must not be a good marketer, because look at how small his reach is, which shows you that reach is not necessarily that indicative of success. But in a world where perception is reality, if the perception isn't there, then it doesn't matter what the reality is. And so we're now really focusing on social media. And this is just a function of the market. The market is on social media. So if I'm not there, I'm not where my market is at. So I have to humble myself and go where they are instead of trying to force them to try to come where I am.
Yeah. But do you think that the kind of people, the kind of person that would think that, oh, he doesn't have that many followers, he's not worth it. Don't you think that only like low quality clients would think that? Like someone who's more experienced, more pro? I think that those kind of people understand that maybe you can have like 5,000 followers, but you still know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they do. And the joke was when I started doing YouTube, because YouTube is my favorite platform. Yeah. Because YouTube is like a 5% social media platform and a 95% educational platform. Instagram is more like 80% entertainment, 20% education. Mm-hmm. So YouTube is still my baby. That's where I want to get back to. And I would joke when I publish these videos that have 1,000 views, most of them would have like even less or a little bit more. But I'd have like 50 people come up to me. I loved your last video. They would message me, text me, and see them at conferences. And I was joking because every single one of them was probably a millionaire. Yeah. And I'm like, dang, my average viewer is probably worth $1 million per video. So I only get 1,000 views on a video, but damn, they're hitting some dollars. The algorithm is really good at finding out who the audience is. And so it was generating me a tremendous amount of business, which was great. But I'm trying to get to a whole nother level in my business. And so it's like, what is the constraint that is preventing that from occurring? And in this particular case, the constraint is that I should be able to have both. If I'm as good of a marketer as I really truly am, then this is a solvable equation. And now we're in the process of solving it, which is exciting. But that was the whole goal, because I'll tell you, when push comes to shove, if they're going to invite somebody to speak at a major conference, they're not going to invite me. They're going to invite the guy that they think people will show up to see. Yeah. And if I'm going to get on some of these bigger podcasts, some of the podcasts that like Alex has been on and some of these other names have been on, they ain't going to invite me on if I don't draw. So I have to draw. Otherwise, I'm just the best kept secret. I'm just working behind the scenes, and I'm working with all the biggest names. But let me just fix that, and then let me improve upon it, because I know every time I've gotten into something and I focused on it, I found innovation. Like I'm an innovator for whatever reason. I just can't do the things the way everybody else does them. It's just not in my DNA. So once I get in there, I'm going to innovate. And now the innovation and a larger stage always has bigger stakes. So like what Alex did on his book launch, his last book launch is, the iteration of the iteration of the iteration of the iteration of things that I have done before that and things that guys have done before that for me. Each time we've developed really good technique, and then the next guys take the technique and then expand upon it, and then they put it in new arenas where the pie is bigger. So I know I'm going to find innovation, and because the pie is so much bigger and the reach is so much greater, that there's going to be some really cool stuff that happens as a result of that. But it requires rearranging the business. So I'm not going to be traveling as much next year. I'm not going to be on the road as much next year. I'm going to take less clients on next year so I can make more space to build this new thing.
Well, you were mentioning before that a lot of people think that the attention spans have reduced and then now it's all about short form content, but you said that you disagree a lot. Why do you think there's that misconception?
I mean, it's not so like that person will still doom scroll for 8 hours, right? So it's like the attention span is really significant. To sit like this for hours and hours and hours, that requires a really long attention span, right? Like people just look at it on a microscopic level. They won't give me the attention anymore like they used to. Well, in any market, when there's substitutables, you're going to get less attention. This is just simple economics, right? If there's one guy on an island with 50 women, okay, he's hot no matter how ugly he is, right? If it's one man and it's 50 women, he's gonna win in that dating economy, right? But when there's, on an island with 50 women, there's 500 men, then it's a different story. And it's not that women don't like men as much. It's just that, in a supply-demand situation, who gets the allocation of resources changes. And so it's not a limit of attention. It's how people expect to consume things in the choices that they have. And so we can get more attention. We just have to be quicker about how we get the attention, because we're competing for more of the attention. But once we have an impact on an audience, then the less attention goes to other substitutes, the more will come to us, and the easier it is to reach. Now, we also might not get as much uninterrupted attention when there's more interruptions in the marketplace. But as an aggregate, we can still get more overall attention because they're on the internet more. They're literally online more. This is what makes this business so much better in 2026 that we're moving into. Because 10 years ago, most people weren't online as nearly as much as they are now. Yeah. And so they're online more. So we might have to reach them at more touch points. And we might have to rely more on branding. So when they see us, they recognize us in the wild than we used to in the past. But the attention has increased. It has decreased. It's just how the attention shows up has changed. And if we change with it, we will get more attention. Because again, I don't have like the exact economics of the situation here. I don't even know where my phone is at. But if I looked on my data, like we just started posting YouTube Shorts, and I think I saw like a 2,000 hours of watch time, something crazy like that in the last 24 hours. I'm like, that's insane. Yeah. Like, if you run the math on that, I'm like 10 full days almost uninterrupted of people consuming. Yeah. That's more attention than I would kill for that attention 10 years ago. It's just different in how the attention shows up. And so I think when people operate under this false paradigm of that there's less attention, that affects how they behave, because then they try to program things that are more superficial. What happens when you make more superficial things is you have less impact, and less impact means less income.
And do you think that when creating content, because something that I usually think about a lot, and I think every day is becoming more and more important, is this whole thing with authenticity, especially now with AI. What's your take on it? Do you think that plays a massive role?
Yeah, I think it really does. AI is creating a very interesting thing that is a lot of people are going to hate, and a few people are going to profit from, me included. I can take a D- copywriter now and turn him into a B+ copywriter with AI. In generally, people that are in countries where English isn't the first language or where English is more difficult to write, we can now level that playing field. They will not be A-plus copywriters, but we can take somebody who couldn't write production copy that we could ship, and now they can. And you pay them $1,000 a month in an economy where they make $500 a month, and that's a good wage. And now they're living a very good lifestyle, much higher lifestyle than they were before. And we're producing copy like you could never produce before. And this is going to change a lot of how the market works. Like, because a lot of copywriters that are right now that are B plus, A minus copywriters, or even B minus copywriters, they're going to struggle because they're now going to compete against a whole new workforce that normally before would be non-competitive. And that workforce is going to actually, I mean, take it for what it is. You can clip this and put it out of context if you want to, but the environment my kids have grown up in the United States is very different than somebody who's grown up in Cairo, Egypt, that's been under the threat of war, whose whole family has had to band together to survive. And there's this concept of we take care of each other and we provide. And if any capable, able individual in the family can provide for the family, it's not a question of if. They do whatever they can, right? So in a lot of instances, the attitude, the work ethic, the commitment, the less distractions because they're not going out and partying and they're not lusting over all of these different objects. They're just trying to provide for their family. Like, the work ethic is higher, the skill gap is less, and it's not because AI itself is replacing people. It's because they're changing the dynamic of the workforce. Now, you could hate that. You could argue against it. You could fight it. You could complain about it. You could bitch and moan. You could pretend it doesn't exist. Or you can program for it. This is why I've hired 12 copywriters this year. I've never hired as many copywriters in my life as I have because of AI. And as a result, I mean, we've ran through a lot of them, and there's like 6 left right now, and I have 2 more that I haven't even gotten to hire again. I have a management bottleneck. If I could solve the management bottleneck, I'd hire 20 copywriters. I'd hire 40 copywriters. And then I would chew through the ones that don't have. Copy's a skill, but like showing up on time is an attitude. It's a characteristic, right? Being able to endure stressful situations. These are more character attributes. So I'm like, I can take an okay copywriter and work with them and get really good results, but I can't create in a short period of time those attitudes. So I'm like, let's hire for the attitude, and then we can bring the AI in to close the skill gap sooner. So this is what we're going to see. And I'm really excited about it because I'm now able to write copy and create webinar scripts and other marketing content in ways I've never seen before. We're literally dividing up. So like an hour and a half webinar might be 15,000 words. That's a long script. But now we can chunk it down and parse it down into 15 parts. And then each part might be 1,000 words. And I'm having 6 copywriters each write 6 different sections of 1,000 words apiece under my guidance and some of the models that I've built. And so now we're creating scripts that are insanely good and very efficient, where you never would think you could write copy like that before. So these are some of the things that are going to be changing. There's going to be a lot changing.
Yeah. There's one thing that I wanted to ask you about copywriting, which is like, there's a lot of people into copywriting, but in my opinion, like most people are very mediocre, and there's only a few people who are actually truly good at copywriting. But why do you think that is? What do you think most people get wrong about copywriting?
I mean, copywriting is such a difficult skill to master, and it is not necessary to be that excellent at it in most instances. Because if you have a really good product and you have a really hot audience, then the copy doesn't have to be great. Now, if the copy is also great, that's when you can just knock it out of the park, set records, do insane things. But of those 3, if I have to prioritize between audience, offer, and message being the copy here, I prioritize offer first, audience second, message last, right? So it's the least important thing, but when you nail it, then it makes everything else more valuable. So that's the thing, is copywriting is a skill that requires an immense amount of effort and time to get really good at. And then oftentimes you are limited with how much you can make if you're just purely a copywriter. So that's why you don't see a lot of people being really good at copy. And the other problem with copy, and this is where people struggle with a lot, my copywriters included, is context. So we have to write in the appropriate context. So if we're writing copy on a webinar, that's very different than if we're writing copy on a VSL. If we're writing email copy to a warm audience who we've built affinity for, I write that copy differently than I do to a cold audience who maybe has just opted in. So we just, knowing when to use what strategies in copy and to what depth and degree is really difficult for most people. And that's why they have trouble being good copywriters. Instead, they get really good at a type of copywriting, like writing scripts for Instagram, or writing emails, or writing social media posts, or writing webinars, or writing VSLs, or writing low ticket funnels and things like that. It's hard to do all of those things really good, and the payoff is not really high for all of those things. But I will tell you, if you have a good foundation in copywriting, that will help you with every other aspect of whatever you do, because you can look at through that lens of copy, and then you'll know, okay, this is how I would sell this offer if I were to create it. So when I'm considering components of my offer, I'm thinking like a copywriter. How would I articulate this? How would I position this? How would I sell this? And that guides me. Seeing when markets are talking about problems they have, if I'm a copywriter, I can value, oh, this problem is a huge problem that they would probably pay a lot of money to solve. I know that because I know really good copy. So it's useful when you grow up from it as a foundation. And that's where I started learning copy in marketing. My marketing foundation was copy. God, what a great foundation it is.
It is indeed. Going back to the whole AI thing, you did mention that obviously it's going to change a lot about copywriting. What other aspects do you think of online business is going to change?
Yeah, I mean, on programming, AI is really interesting. A lot of people are able to push out these very quick apps. They can vibe code them, or they can create these bots, which are like apps in a sense, right? They're really just chat bots, or they're like prompted AI bots, but more interactive. And so the ability to validate and test ideas on a software side is incredible. It's fast. I still think you should validate, like we're talking about in beta, then come back and build it correctly. But you are no longer constrained with, hey, I want to develop this quick little app and see if the marketplace grabs it and see if it can be useful. So I think there's a really great opportunity on the AI side to validate very quickly software ideas and app ideas. And I think people are missing the boat on this because they're trying to make the vibe coded app the end result. I think the vibe coded app should be the validation to the market to then allocate the resources and the programming to create a really good version. So your MVP now, your minimum viable product, is the vibe coded app, but that should never be the end goal. And I think that's going to be really exciting to see what that looks like. I also, I don't know what the bubble, or if there is a bubble on the AI space. So that's going to be interesting to see if there is a bubble and it pops, what happens. Because currently, you cannot sustain the market of what OpenAI and such are paying, because they're losing money on every single user. And the current economics don't make sense for it to ever be profitable. But you can't base the future on past results. So there could be a way where that happens, probably like a 60% chance of that happening. So there's a 40% chance we're going to have a bubble that pops, and there's probably a 60% chance that it's going to figure itself out. Technology is going to show up that didn't quite exist, and now it changes economics, things like that. Other black swan potential events can occur. So you kind of got to be aware of the fact that this may not be the future. It may fall apart. And then 20 years later, the future emerges, because the dot-com bubble fell apart, but Amazon was a company during the dot-com too, right? So like from the ashes, the phoenix emerges of the future, but it could go through a period of 5 or 10 years where the bottom falls out. So we got to build anti-fragile models for sure.
Do you think, because obviously your main thing is webinars, how do you see beyond the part of copywriting that you already mentioned? Do you think that's gonna evolve somehow with AI, or maybe not with AI? Like, what do you think are the future of webinars?
Yeah, I think the future is really good, because webinars are the best, most efficient manner that I know of to reach the mass market audience. I don't think there's a better um, model that exists. It'd be like saying our concerts no longer going to be a thing in the music industry. The fact that concert demand has increased due to streaming and due to the ability to download music. CD sales fell off, right? Album sales and royalties on music directly wasn't like it used to be, but concerts have increased because that is an experience, that is an event. And a webinar is an experience. And if you do them live, like we tend to do, it's an organic experience. And so I think the demand for webinars is going to increase, and I think the impact is going to increase as a result. Now, you have to do them differently than you used to have to do them. I'll give you the example. So like when I work with Iman Godzi, we do those launches. We now do something that would be impossible like even 3 years ago. We write 5 webinars and we script every word of all 5 webinars. And then we build slides the way that I always teach people to build slides, which is like a slide every 5 seconds. So we have 500 plus slide decks for 5 days straight. So that's insane, the amount of copy that we write. So that is different, but there's more people that you can hire to do that. The technology with Keynote for collaboration or PowerPoint or Google Slides has massively increased. Stock photos, you used to never be able to get those. These cost $75 a stock photo when I was coming up in the business, right? Now you can do it for free. So it's a different kind of hard. Here's what people want that they're never going to get. It's not that it's going to become easier, and it's not necessarily that it becomes harder. It's just the hard changes. And so before, the hard was, I never had to write a webinar in my life where every word was scripted. It wasn't necessary. The hard was more in the difficulty of being able to create slides, because slides used to be very hard to create. The hard was being able to reach an audience in mass scale. That used to be insanely hard. Even creating product used to be very expensive and very difficult, right? Those are easier now. So you take and you move the allocation of resources from those things into different things. So the effort is the same. What you're focusing the effort on changes. And so now it becomes more about focusing on teams, building teams more, and being able to create things that are across the board better at each step of the process. But because each step is a little bit easier, when you combine them together, it's still the same amount of hard. The best part, though, is the payoff, if you're good at this, is higher than it's ever been, because you can reach more people than you can ever reach before, and you can still consolidate markets. Markets tend to still only hold 3 to 5 providers in their head on a given topic at most. It's just now the markets are larger. So if you can occupy one of the spaces, the win is greater. And there are more sub niches where you can occupy smaller niches and be one of those 2 or 3 names in that niche. And even in those smaller niches, the chunk is higher because there's less money being spent offline and there's more money being spent online. And that continues to trend upward in the online favor. So the future of webinars is very bright.
Since you're you sell a lot of educational products, something that I was curious to hear from you is that because there's a lot of education sold online, in the make money online space, what do you think are some of the biggest lies or myths or bad pieces of advice that you hear but are very popular?
I mean, so the whole being in an attention deficit, I think that is a lie. I think also, and a lot of guys I work with, we disagree on this. I think this whole we're in a trust recession. It's a very popular talking point right now. I think it's completely bullshit because I see less trustworthy individuals on social media than ever before, and they're doing pretty well.
Right.
So I think the notion of the idea that people are more trustworthy these days feels really good. I don't think it's true at all. I think being trustworthy is a very noble and valuable skill to have, and we definitely cultivate trust. But to pretend that all of a sudden the market has decided that they're going to start trusting people more doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't net when you look at it objectively. So I think a lot of people are being scared with this idea of like, oh my God, I'm not trustworthy, so therefore I shouldn't do something. It's like, you got to do something to build the trust anyway. So you might as well do it even if people don't trust you as much. And so I don't think that there's an attention deficit. I don't think that there's a trust recession. I wish there was a trust recession. That would just make it easier for me. I am a big fan of quantity. And so when people like Gary Vee are saying push a bunch of stuff out there, I believe you should. I think, though, that the old paradigm was quantity was sufficient. I think the new paradigm is you have to simultaneously be of quality and of quantity. So you should solve for that. Here's the good news. It's possible to solve for that because there are tools, there are processes, there are things you can leverage now that you couldn't leverage before, but you have to simultaneously be good and output a tremendous amount. So I think that that's a big deal. I think this whole notion of there's no such thing as burnout, I just completely disagree 100% with that. The reason why you don't hear it is that people that die from burnout no longer have a voice. So you're only left with a survivor bias, right? So the rare individuals who have a higher resilience and tolerance to stress are going to have a louder voice as a result of that. I think it is a dangerous paradigm for the average person or even the exceptional person to model with this idea that burnout doesn't exist. Your body has its limits, and if it breaks down, that is a sign that you're pushing too hard. And over a long time horizon, you should not have to work this hard to be successful. Over a long time horizon, you're doing it wrong if you have to work 80 to 120 hours a week. That is poor strategy, in my opinion, unless you're doing it because you enjoy working and you don't care about the money. But then you're also probably an addict. So
yeah. Okay, we only have a few minutes left. Maybe just one or more two questions. I wanted to ask you, like, obviously you've written a book, really good book. What are some of your favorite books besides yours, obviously?
So, and this was the one that the reel that went viral yesterday, or starting to go viral, was on Thinking Fast and Slow. So I did a whole reel. I'm like, this is the most important book I think anybody can read in business. And I gave a little 17-second breakdown. So it's not because I don't believe that attention spans are shortening. I think it's just a cool new way to communicate information, and you're able to do it very efficiently, very fast. And it was a really cool video. So Thinking Fast and Slow is an incredibly great book, and it really teaches cognitive flexibility. And also, I think I read a lot of books that are outside of business, and they've been useful to me. So books on like therapy, like The Sociopath Next Door is a book I just read. And it really gives you an understanding of this model of like 3% of the population has sociopathic tendencies. So you're not going to fix them. It's not a you problem. There's nothing you can do to adjust it. You just got to have boundaries to protect yourself from these individuals. And that's just a function of society. So that was a really good book that I read recently. I read books on hypnotism a lot because it helps me communicate things from a different perspective than just a business perspective. So like My Voice Will Go With You. It's these transcripts from Milton Erickson. And I learn a lot about how to communicate from a different modality than the normal modality of just telling somebody directly. So indirect communication. 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Reason Trout is such a foundational business book. I think everybody should read it because it'll give you some lessons there that I've now used in every single business. And I read that book 27 years ago. When I was not 27, 17 years ago, when I was just getting started in this business, and it had a profound impact on me. Blitz Scaling is one of my favorite books in recent memory. It's more akin to the current market. You don't hire for the position. You hire generalists that can fill in on any position when you're getting started. And then over time, as your business grows, then they will find the right positions to ascend to. So like, again, working with Iman, all of his key players on his team that I work with, I asked him one day, how did you get started in the company? the role they're in now is nowhere near the role they were in when they first started. So like his CMO, I think, started as a media buyer, and his operations guy started as an appointment center for calls, right? So, and that's what we do now. We hired for the general
Yeah.
concept of every week your role could change. And then once we grow, then the people will naturally fall into the roles that make sense. So blitz scaling has just been a phenomenal resource for that.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jason, for being here and for agreeing to do the interview. If you want to leave like a final message and also where people can find you and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to grow Instagram, and it's going really well. I think there's always a trailing indicator when you do something excellent. So you do something excellent, and things don't tend to change that much.
Mm-hmm.
But then several months down, the repercussions of what you did today show up. So I think we're there. We're doing excellent work, and it's still a hidden gem, even though we got like over 1 million views. So on social, follow me on Instagram. Get the book, One to Many. As you said, it's really a persuasion masterclass
Exactly.
disguised as a webinar manual.
Yeah.
So that book is the greatest thing that I can contribute to business so far. So get the book. It's $9 Kindle book on Amazon. Follow me on Instagram and hit me up if you enjoyed this.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.